All right.
Okay. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your man, Rodney. I'm here to talk to you guys about how to start a podcast because, a lot of people say they have a voice that they believe everybody needs to hear and they got a message for everybody. Well, the most important thing you need to do is learn how to get that voice out there. And that's something we're going to do right now. I'm going to take you through 6 steps, 6 easy steps to launch a podcast. And before you know it, you're going to be out there. The world's going to be listening to you. And you get your message out there. The first step when you develop when you start a podcast is that you need to develop a concept. And when I talk about concept is your podcast going to be one dealing with pop culture? Is it professional development? Is it inspirational? Is it news? Is it hip hop? What are you going to cover? So that's the first thing you want to think about, Natalie. You still there?
Yes. Okay. So the different genres to consider, run that back for me again.
Okay, the different genres you want to consider. You got to develop a concept. So what you're thinking about is, am I doing pop culture, professional development? Is it going to be inspirational, spiritual, faith-driven? Is it going to be dealing with news, personal development also? And or if you just go cover hip hop and R&B, just go cover music. So these are the types of things you need to decide when you're talking about having a podcast. That's the first step. So when you think about a podcast, what are you thinking about starting?
So mine is going to be personal and professional development.
Okay. All right. Personal and professional development. See, we got that down. I like that about you. See, you already know which direction you're going. When I talk to other people about a podcast, sometimes we have to help them figure out why are you even doing one. So you already know why you're doing one. So you know your goals. Your goals. So, go ahead.
So for the people who don't know.
Yeah, for the people who don't know.
How do we get them clear?
For the people who don't know, the way we get you clear is that you got to take some time to do an inventory of who you are. And that's something that we do at the Greater Purpose Society. We help you learn and figure out who you are so you know your why. So when you step out into the world, you're stepping out boldly and fully and completely 100% yourself. So you need to be able to do that before you do anything.
So the podcast is specifically connected to your voice, and your voice is the message that you want to get out into the world, and the message you want to get out into the world has everything to do with you. So you have to get clear on who you are and what you want the world to know, and that's what you're building the podcast around.
That is 100% correct. You just earned the prize. That is exactly what you have to do, because you can't tell people, you can't go out and talk to people about a message if you don't know what the message is. Confusion. There's an old saying, if there's a mist in the pulpit, there's a fog in the pews. So if you kind of cloudy out there, if you're not sure what you're going to say to your congregation, they really going to be messed up as you're talking to them. So it's very important.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So I know my concept is personal professional development. So clarify this for me, is that, I got my own sauce, right? And in my sauce, it's going to have all of the above. You know what I mean? There'll be inspiration in there. There'll be, faith-based stuff in there and all of that. But so for the person who doesn't understand that you put your sauce in it, you're not locked into the delivery of it, but you have to be crystal clear on who you're talking to and what the end result is. As a result of listening to my podcast, it is going to do what?
That's the perfect segue, because once you decide on a concept, you have to decide what's your goal. What do you got to begin with the end in mind. What do you want your listeners to walk away with when they listen to your podcast? For example, when people hear my podcast, I want them to be inspired to step out. One of the things I say is to stop watching inspiring lives and become one. So I want you to be able to, when you hear my podcast, it's like you like, okay, I need to step it up and get outside and do what I'm really on this earth for. There's people who are waiting to hear my message. There are people who are dying because they don't know my story. So my story is very important to them. My podcast is entitled the Produce Your Own Life Podcast, because we all are personally accountable to make sure that we see the vision in our life come to fruition.
Love it. Okay. So at the end of my podcast, I want people to walk away with clarity about what their next step is going to be in regards to whatever the episode is. I want my listeners to have actionable steps and resources that they can implement right then and there for whatever the topic is.
Okay. With that being said, then after you decide, since you know all these processes and that a lot of people need to have in place, you're set up to really name your podcast already. Because that's within step one, is that you got to go through all this process before you even step out to find who's going to be your host and stuff like that, stuff we're going to discuss. So the next step is, go ahead.
So most people go into it with the title of the podcast first.
Yes.
And not even the clarity of the concept and the goal. And you fall in love with the name that may be disconnected from the actual deliverable.
That is exactly correct. That's like the $1 million question. That's something that a lot of us, do. We kind of just jump out, I guess they say willy-nilly. You go out there Wild West and you don't have a vision for what you're doing. And even when I started my podcast, I didn't necessarily have a complete vision for what I wanted. I just knew that I had been procrastinating for way too long. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. Had I, if I was to do it all over again, I would definitely make sure I was completely clear. Like I would go through a process of evaluating, which I've done now. And, I had to rebrand and rename my podcast. So gratefully, I was able to keep my listeners. And because the original name of my podcast kind of lined up with everything, but it wasn't all the way clear.
So that's what was it originally?
It was RDC Speak Life Sessions. So it was really about, I was like starting it based out of when we started COVID and quarantine started picking up. And I was concerned about people's welfare, their mental health. And I'm like, well, you know what? I got a voice. Let me just inspire people. that's what I decided to do my podcast for.
And that's why Speak Life fit.
Yeah.
But so what changed for you?
What changed for me is that I had to go through a deeper inventory of who I really am and let that be seen, because who I'm known as an actor, I'm known as a producer, and how I can tie that in to my podcast and come up with a name that, to me, it's catchier. You want a name that when people say it, it kind of makes them really want to jump to action. RDC Speak Life Sessions is clear, but I think that's a lot in there. Produce Your Own Life podcast. It says it very clearly and simply.
So now it's a brand.
It's a brand. It's a brand. It's something you can wear on your shirt. It's something you gonna have in your coffee mug. You gonna have that. You ain't gonna have RDC Speak Life Sessions on those.
Right. Okay. So after you have the concept and you have the goal, is naming it within one or two of these steps, or is it the third step?
Naming it is within step one. This is like step one, letter C. The final step of step one is now.
Got it.
Free to go ahead. Now let's name the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. And naming the podcast consists of brainstorming. You have a few people that's in your circle, trusted people that you bounce the name off of and see if it's catchy. Especially if you have a life coach and somebody who can help you really process some things. You want to have it, and then you like check out with some marketers. See, like, would this be able to create a brand? Because that's what you want to do. You want to do something that's going to be a household name.
Okay. Okay. And so I am in the process of creating my brand. I was more the RDC Speak Life type of person,
Yeah.
and I'm in the process of creating my brand. And so ultimately it was going to be I have many parts to me, right? So I have Truth No Chaser, which is catchy, and it's really who the essence of who I am as a person. But when we talk about personal and professional development, it doesn't align. And so Truth No Chaser will be more like my segments elsewhere and other things that I do. So I found a home for that. And so when it comes to personal and professional development, I haven't placed myself in that space yet. So what does that, because I was gonna do New Girl Biz, right? That is very clear. It's new women to business and how to get your life and business in alignment so that you can, create what you want. But I have a lot of male clients and followers and stuff. And so that would limit me.
That would cut me out.
And it would cut you out. We can't have that, right? And so how do you're a part of my my community. So let's play around with what that brainstorming looks like. What kind of questions would you ask me to bring me to clarity? And knowing what you know about me, what would make you want to tune in to what I have to say? Because I drop gems. I was everybody's like, yo, you drop gems, you drop gems. They always call me the truth, and they always say you drop gems. And though that's consistently, and it's true. So I was like the gem dropper, that's brandable, but for a podcast, remember, I'm in the process of branding. So I'm taking all these different things to really capture the essence of Natalie, because I'm a whole situation. For most people, it's real simple, but I am a whole situation.
A whole cake.
Yeah. Layered, like layered. And every layer is going to give you a different flavor, but it's not about me. Essence, the experience is me, but the deliverable is what the podcast should be called. It's the deliverable. So I was going to do purpose and profits.
Purpose and profit.
Right? Because that's personal and professional.
Yes. It definitely connects, because that's what many people are seeking.
Exactly.
Like, who am I? Why am I on this earth? Why do I wake up every morning?
Right. And it aligns with my two proprietary systems, which is greater purpose and greater profit.
Yes. I like the name. I like that name, but let's try to think of a couple more. So, you can have a couple to choose from, because you never just want to have one and just be like, okay, that's it.
That's a good point.
I do like that. And when I think about branding it's thinking about how do you want want the show to be thought about. Like when somebody's saying, like if somebody's telling somebody, yo, you need to check out this new podcast. You want to, how do you like hearing people say you want to hear the Purpose and Profit podcast? Or trying to think what else, but I like you. One thing you started with this is, what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, you know, you may not use it as a name, but what do you want? That question just stands out with me, because when you asked me that question a long time ago, I had to really stop and take inventory. Like, what exactly do I want? And I think that's something that many people, they find their purpose when they start evaluating what they want, what they really want in life. So when I think about how you've impacted my life, that question is one of the things I've never been able to forget. What do you want?
And that's what I want to be, you know, just a very simple question, but not, you know, and like you, a lot of people, it's caused them to really tap in. And that's what really the show is about. Like, you have no business creating a life or a business, a relationship, children, anything, if you don't know what you want.
So true.
You know,
And
so how do this is the most important step to me.
yes.
I am holding the responsibility of this call. This is not just a podcast. This is a movement. It's a voice. It transforms lives. You know, faith comes by hearing and hearing. We focus a lot on video, but we don't understand how what we hear really shapes us. And so I really hold the responsibility of naming this properly, because it's really, you know, one of my word banks is clarity.
Yes.
It's clarity. And that is the clarity question. What do you want? So would clarity be in the name of the podcast?
Yes. I think you should have it, because I was actually getting ready to talk about clarity.
Okay.
How you emphasize it. So that's right. I was like the clarity call or something, you know, something like that, because
A call to clarity.
a call to clarity, you know, something, because that's what people are foggy about. Yeah, you could probably say, I would say 85-90% of people in this world are unclear.
Yeah.
And I can just say that from, I won't mention the name of the new app out, but you know, those meetings that we go in and this app, and I'm listening to people introduce themselves, and I was like, wow, that's how I used to sound.
Yeah. No clue.
I told Falada, I was laughing. I said, man, okay, I get it now. That's how I used to sound. That's why it was like, well, what exactly, you know, it's like you do a million things. Okay, what exactly, who are you?
Right.
So it was like a lot of people who need help. Need clarity. That clarity gives you power.
Clarity is power.
You like Superman, then you just coming out the telephone booth like, let's go.
Let's go.
Yes.
So that's ultimately it. That's why I say I want you to know exactly what I said. I want my audience to be clear about exactly what they want and need to do based upon the topic.
Yes. Well, I'm with you. I like put like this. You have purpose and prosperity, right?
Purpose and profit.
And profit. Purpose
and then profits. a call to clarity.
A call to clarity
is at the top.
Is at the top.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. And you know, you definitely probably want to bounce this off on some brand experts that you work with, or just to see what they would say. But I love the call to clarity, because I can see that Apple, iHeart, all these different podcast platforms, that's being one of the top ones, and then having your beautiful face on there smiling with, you know, on there. You know, I would just think that would just reel people in, because they're like, hey, what's this about?
All right, so we'll play with the somewhere around the clarity space. Yes. Okay. So thank you for that. So that is important, right? Is that you have to have your concept. You have to know what you want your audiences takeaways to be. And through that, now let's go ahead and name it based upon what you want that to be. So let's just go with the call to clarity, right? So we have the call to clarity. And so then what would be the next step, Rodney?
Okay, you got the name. Next, you got to decide on the format. And what I mean by format is that what type of show are you going to do? Are you going to do an interview type show? Are you going to have a co-host? Are you just going to give like news updates? And so that goes back a little bit. It kind of runs with the concept, but the most important thing is the format of the show. So interview. I chose the interview type format because one, I think bringing other guests onto the show lets the listeners get inspired by hearing somebody else. Me as the host, I do short podcast episodes where it's less than 10 minutes where I'm giving a lesson or talk real quick. So that's how I get my single voice out, but I love doing the interview format. And co-host, I think, is something that I'm adding to my podcast as I come back, where I'm going to have a few episodes where I have co-hosted. So I think that adds another element, but I decided to do that as I started growing the podcast.
So I'm always an and person, right? There's a song, you could get with this or you could get with that, right? Yes. And I'm a this, that person. I think that's why I always got sauce, because I'm like, well, why can't I do both? I do both. And so in my mind, it's the format one is based upon what works. What is the industry saying is like the thing, because people are short span, yes. Their attention span is short, and we're really all, there are 9 million, podcasts, and we're all fighting for the same 24 hours that each person has. And so I just want a little piece, yes. I just want a little piece of it. And so the format, honestly, I believe that I'm way more interesting than most people that I interview. And I would not enjoy a whole bunch of interviews. I enjoy talking to like people like you and stuff that I know. So I would like bring on my people to have more conversation. Put it like this. It would be conversation versus interview.
Okay.
So, and then when you were saying like little short 10-minute episodes, I definitely want to give my nat snacks.
Yes. Ooh, you need to just keep that right there. I love that.
Nat snacks.
I'm serious. That jumped out to me. You see how it jumped out? I was like, yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, everybody want a little snack throughout the day or something, 10 minutes.
Right. And that's the gem dropper. You know what I mean? It's like, let me just drop some gems on you right quick. You get that little snack and you go on about your business.
Yes. I love it. I think because when it comes to choosing format, it's based upon what you want. What do you want? There's not one format that's better than the other. I think it just suits the personality. And just like you said, my personality is, you already described it. And I do think you are far more interesting than if you were to bring a bunch of guests. People will listen to you. And but then you got to decide, how long do you want people to listen to you? Like your full episodes. Typically, what I've learned in my first year is that I have to condense my podcast and keep it 30 minutes or less if I have an interview or something like that. Because as you said, the attention span of people is just too short. So you gotta I have to get more concise, and that's something I would advise everybody to do, is be very concise and to the point when it comes to your podcast. But we could listen to you for 30 minutes. I know I could, and people do listen to you. You're a speaker.
Yeah.
And so people listen to you for 30 minutes, and I think even if you split it up and if you had certain different types of yourself coming out within that 30 minutes, that would entertain people. You can act your what off. So I'm serious, you can switch personalities left and right like it's nothing. I think those types of things will really keep people engaged. You probably can come
So
up with a different personality that you play at a different segment in your podcast.
right.
You
And
know, give them some
so,
Jamaican, you know.
right. So I'm thinking give the like you were saying, the sauce. So it's show the expert side of me
Mm-hmm.
and in the beginning, and then have somebody come on and I ask them specific questions about whatever it is that I spoke about in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, leave them with the entertainment, the you know, now we talked about the craziness and stuff now.
Yeah.
Now make sure you go out so when I give them the takeaways, it's actually fun and exciting and they feel like they can do it.
That's exactly what you would do.
Okay.
To me, it's no different than when you're giving a talk in front of an audience.
Right.
It's no different. No different. You have your format set up, and that's how you hit.
Got it.
Because the same way you hitting people when you're talking in front of thousands of people, the same way they go listen to you when you're doing your podcast.
Good stuff.
So
okay. All right. So that's gonna be my format. The first five, I want it to be 15 minutes.
mm-hmm.
First 5 minutes will be the gem dropper, or
Yes.
to lay the foundation of what the takeaway is going to be, what the topic is, and then I'll have somebody to chime in on their experience or their input on the topic.
Yes.
And then the last 5 minutes will be the takeaways.
I absolutely love that time. 15 minutes too. You're gonna leave them wanting more, as they say.
Yep.
You know, never give it all to them. You know, when you're done, they go like, "Dang, when the next episode coming up?"
Yeah. Yep.
I love that. And one thing you want to do, since we're talking format too, you want to add in, especially for Apple Podcasts, is that you always want to put in, please make sure you like and rate the podcast, because likes on the Apple Podcast brings it up on the ratings. It puts it in their rotation, their algorithm. It puts it in more. It's easier for people to find it when people like and give a rating of your podcast. And it helps sponsors. When sponsors are looking at who they're going to, put some money into, they want to see what the audience think about it.
Okay.
So I think Apple does the best job when it comes to allowing you to get ratings for people to see, how your podcast ranks. Mine is on Apple, Spotify, iHeart. It's on every podcast platform. But I love the way Apple does the ratings.
Okay. So Apple, Spotify,
iHeart.
Okay. Those are different platforms.
Yes. And there's at least probably 20 different platforms, but we'll get to that. Okay. Before we leave step 2, you have to decide your publishing schedule. How often do you want to put your podcast out?
Okay.
They say it's recommended that you do at least one a week during your season. Like you can have 2 seasons a year. You can have a season running from say January through April. Then you take a break and you come back and hit them again. Do another season, like say end of July and run to like right at the end of October. So then that gives people enough time to catch up with your old episodes, and you get enough time to get other episodes done, and you kind of stockpile them, and you just, or we used to call it when I was in sales, sandbag. You can upload your podcast on the schedule and keeps you more with your time too. Especially if you're going to do it the format you're talking about, you can really sandbag podcasts, and you can set up a schedule, and it would just save. You can record 3 or 4 podcasts in one of your sessions, which will save you a lot of time.
Okay.
And you got to listen what time it's going to come out. Like when you're giving like a little intro to your show, talking about yourself. Remember, we're coming out Mondays at noon, or Monday. Be sure to listen to the next new podcast at this time, whatever, so people know to jump in at that time and get it. Just like a TV show.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, so we're pretty much done with the first two steps, which are, to me, the most important steps. We talked about naming the podcast and really coming up with the concept, which we've done. And then we decided on a format. These two will make sure you are very clear to your audience and will help you gain a mass listening, massive, just worldwide global impact. That's what we want to do with this podcast. We want to be like, you make sure that you're a player from the Himalayas, get you all over the place. Like Himalayas. Next thing, step 3 is very easy. It's deciding on podcast equipment. And when I started my podcast, I just started reading some articles, and I saw that different internet providers like Amazon and other companies, distributors, they sell podcast kits. And I basically just bought a podcast kit. I spent a little over $150 for it, in which I use it now. It helps me with a lot of different things, voiceover and everything. But I have a Behringer. You see, I got my little headphones on, when I'm recording, and it comes with the mic. Has a nice little mixer, which you don't even need to pay anybody to mix it for you. It's very easy to learn how to do when you're doing a podcast starting out. But you can create this own studio right in your house. And I have my computer right in front of me. And it's basically you record and then you mix it right here. So my computer, it doesn't have to be a MacBook, but I'm kind of partial to Mac. It could be a Windows, any type of computers, PC. But make sure these are the types of supplies that you need to launch your podcast. There's a lot of different type of sample packages you can look at. I won't really get into them because if you Google that, you'll get 10 different types. And it's all based upon your budget. It really is. And I've started businesses in the past, and starting a podcast is a business. So what I tell people is the cheaper you can start your business, the better. And that other people's money spent better than yours. So don't spend all your money when you're launching this thing, because you have to really make sure you learn how to do this and that you are capturing the audience. And once you get sponsors in, then you can say, I'm gonna upgrade my equipment. So that's what I recommend. Any thoughts?
That makes sense. Like, you to invest all this money and don't nobody want to hear you.
Yeah, you'll be mad. You'll be mad. Be crying.
Right.
You're just having a good time by yourself.
Right. So headphones, mixer, computer, and headphones are a preference, right?
Yeah, because I like using headphones when I record because I want to hear how I'm sounding.
Yeah.
So that helps me if I'm not talking, not say loud enough, but clear enough. Then I'll make sure I'm enunciating better. Things such as that. The mic is always good because it makes your voice sound amazing on the podcast. And these, all these packages, they basically come with software that you download directly from their websites when you buy them. When they arrive, they have the whole keyword, whatever, that you'll input into the website, and it'll allow you to directly download the software to your computer. So you have the mixing software, and you're ready to go. It's very simple. I would say $150 max for somebody starting a podcast is what you want to invest.
Okay. All right. So I have my very expensive microphone that I purchased, and then I got the eyeball like studio sound, or I got all of that stuff. I got my MacBook. Yes. I don't have a mixer or whatever, but I mix all my audio and chop it up in iMovie.
Okay.
So all right, so I got step 3. Yeah.
I was like, if you already, because that step 3 is covered. That's why I was like, step 3 is good. So once again, step 1, we've covered that. a concept which entails you having a name for the podcast, so you can be clear, and then having a podcast format. Step 2, we've covered that, and we've covered the type of equipment that you want to get, especially starting out. Step 4, recording your first podcast. You know, that's when it gets fun, because what I love about recording the podcast is that if I mess it up, okay, I just delete and start over again. You know, I'm not doing something live. So that's some of the beauty of doing a podcast. You can do it and then listen to it and be like, do I really want this out? So that's some of the fun in doing it. But what you do is you take some time. Your first podcast has always got to entail, this is your very first one. You want people to remember this. It's about first impressions, right? It's just like their first time meeting you. So what do you want them to feel like and walk away with listening to the first podcast? And even before you do the first podcast, you can do a trailer. A trailer is, a minute, maybe a minute and 30 seconds, where you give a quick intro, like coming soon, this podcast, and, bringing that fire. Just like you helped me and gave me an incredible outro for my show. Mm-hmm. People love that. I've gotten feedback. People love that. They was like, who is that? With that energy. So I was just like, man, because I think that helps people have something to remember. So your name, but and your voice, your energy, people feel that through that podcast, through the audio.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so first impressions, what do you want them to feel and think of, look forward to? Your new voice on the scene. And so is that first podcast really a getting to know you type of thing, or you're jumping straight in to give them what they're going to be expecting?
It's definitely getting to know you, because
okay,
any consumer, they want to know about the product before they buy. So you gotta let them know. It's like, you gotta be that car salesman. You be like, look right here, I got that V6 right here. You got the leather heated and vented cool seats. You got the Mark Levinson sound system, 6-way speaker. That's what you're doing right now with the first podcast. Yeah. You are selling the new car. And making sure they drive off the lot today.
Got it. Okay. All right. So we record the trailer is really the first thing that you want to record.
Correct.
And then, and then you want, that's the teaser. Yes. The coming soon. Yes. And then you want to record your first episode, which is a getting to know you episode.
Correct.
The test drive.
That's it. The test drive. And you and I both know we love our Lexus. So if I test drive a Lexus, chances are I'm gonna be stuck. I'm leaving with it today.
Right.
so I don't go to a dealership unless I'm ready to buy, because I know I'll be crying.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, good stuff. So the first one is recorded.
Yes.
And is there a process that you would recommend in the layout of what that first recording sounds like, and what that trailer format sounds like and looks like?
Well, I'm one who likes to use music with it, especially for the teaser trailer. You have some nice music coming with it. You want to hit them with your energy. You want to be very brief and concise with the trailer, like coming soon, or you can start off with a question to people listening. Have you ever this? Have you ever this? Or, dealing with clarity, something. And then you invite them in, coming soon, this podcast. So I think that's how I would recommend somebody would start their podcast, their trailer, in order to get people interested in listening to it. I'm trying to think. I'm looking here. Okay, I'll get to that step in a second. because I have my steps. I have my steps in front of me too, because I never want to forget when I'm talking.
Right.
I always have a cheat sheet.
Cheat sheet, yes. And so in the actual format of the very first getting to know you, what do people really want to know?
Why should I listen? You know, my time is valuable. If it's 15 minutes of my life, it better be a good 15 minutes.
You know? So why should I listen? What to expect?
Yes. Why, the what,
and the when.
Yeah, and the when. It's almost with them. What's in it for me? Yeah, but that is the why, the what, the when. I like that. 3 W's.
Yeah.
Those are 3 W's you want to come with. And to make sure that it keeps you very clear with your episode. Because if anybody's a speaker like me, I tend to run on a tangent sometimes. So I have to be very careful with that. So I need a playbook.
Got it. Okay. So we have that first episode recorded.
Yeah.
Now what?
First episode recorded is great. Then you got to get out and start promoting it too. You know, and before we even get to that step, because that was step 4, we've done that. Let's switch around something real quick. Just for, you can do these either way, but you definitely want to know which platform, which that you're going to use to kind of service and house your podcast. There's 3 different ones that I recommend: Anchor, Buzzsprout, and Overcast. Anchor. Say that again. There's Anchor,
and this is where you're hosting.
Yes.
Hosting your podcast.
Yeah, they're the ones who are going to come up with your URL for your podcast, so you can actually be able to get it onto Apple, to Spotify, to iHeart, to all the different platforms, Google. You need a hosting site similar to a website.
Okay. And they are?
You have Anchor. Anchor is extremely popular because for a beginner who knows really nothing about, radio show programming, that type of stuff, Anchor makes it very simple for you to get going.
Okay.
So there's no monthly fee with Anchor. It's completely free. But you can actually get sponsoring through Anchor when you start consistently doing your podcast. And then Anchor allows you to use their commercial. You talk about Anchor, and that's like your first commercial for your podcast. Okay. So to me, it's kind of like cutting your teeth. If a person doesn't have any experience whatsoever in this, I would recommend Anchor. I'm actually switching mine over to Buzzsprout.
And that's Buzz, Buzzsprout.
Yes, Buzz.
Okay.
Buzzsprout.
Okay.
And Buzzsprout, it has like 5 different plans. They have a free plan, which is very limited. And they go all the way to, I think, $45, $50 a month. My plan is going to be $12 a month because it gives me advanced analytics, because now you are functioning as a business. So you got to be able to analyze who's listening to your podcast, get the details. What time of day are people listening to it? What parts of the world are you the most popular? What's happening? It's going to give you that type of feedback. It's going to help you sponsors. It's going to help. They're like, sponsors are going to be looking for that type of analytics, but also Buzzsprout has a list of sponsors they work with, and they will actually start promoting you to them once you build up a certain following of subscribers. It lets you know revenue, what you could potentially be making if you're not doing advertising, but it also lets you know what you're bringing in when you start advertising. So it does a lot of the work for you. And I'm willing to pay, $12, $15, $20 a month for that, because that's worth my time. I'm not going to sit here and be working on spreadsheets all day. I'd rather somebody else do that.
Right.
Yeah, Overcast is very similar to Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout is just the more popular one. So I highly recommend, you know, as you grow as from beginner podcast to intermediate, advanced, that you really step it up to the next level so you can really be able to be a business, because that's what this is.
So would you say in the beginning, it's really, you want to focus on quality content? Like that's what you want to do, quality content and consistency.
That's it.
Okay.
Those two things. Build up. I didn't realize that I've done over 90 episodes, but when I started the migration over to Buzzsprout this past week, they were like, "You have 90 episodes in your first season." I was like, "Whoa!" So that really blew me away. I didn't realize I did that many, but I was consistently just putting it out there, and I created a schedule, and I just kind of stayed. I just stayed with it. You basically have to employ yourself. You have to treat it like an occupation, a profession. At this time of the day, I'm recording. I'm not doing nothing else but recording for 4 hours. This is my time slot. I'm in my studio.
Got it.
So what I would like to do is switch around. Like step 4, which we talked about recording, should really be step 5. And step 5 is what we just covered.
Right. So because you want to find a host before you record.
Yeah. So that should switch around.
Good. That's why it's so good to say it out loud.
Yes, you're right. Because, you know, writing it down, I'm looking at it now. I was like, man, that should actually be step. I got to switch that around.
Mm-hmm. And you beat me to it. I was like,
yeah. You was thinking,
as a producer, you're like, well, how you get to the bedroom and you was just in the garage?
It's like I'm smooth like that. You didn't know?
Okay, so I picked my host, and would you say to just start with Anchor, or it's okay to just start with Buzzsprout? You didn't know about Buzzsprout at first.
On your level, because you have experience being on radio, TV, everything, I would go to Buzzsprout on your level. Mm-hmm. You're not the typical person starting a podcast.
Okay.
The typical brand new person who has no training, communications, hasn't gone to any radio schools or anything like that, Anchor. They need to do that at least for the first season, and maybe even half the first season if you really start getting rolling. But Anchor, just go build your confidence.
Okay.
and let you know you can get this out here, because you can plug in your phone and do it. It's very simple. It doesn't require all this equipment. Anchor, you can just use this right here. You just plug a mic, small little mic, plug that into your phone. Bam, you good to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool beans. And so I have my account with Buzzsprout, and I record my first session episode with them. And so what does that process look like? Are you like, you just mix it, all that other stuff, and you send it to them, and then they add their stuff? Like, how does that go?
It's really, really cool with Buzzsprout, because they have a mixer that will automatically fix the audio sound. That's another incredible feature, because Anchor doesn't offer that. So when you upload your podcast, it's automatically, you select that option, it's automatically going to detect if there's issues with the audio, if it's static, anything. It's going to clear it all up. So people, as they're listening to it, they're going to be like, okay, I'm getting clarity in how I'm hearing the person sound. It's quality. The music, if you have music in the background, which I love to have a little soft music, because I like an interview conversation style, like you just sitting over somebody's house, drinking a glass of wine, just talking. So that's why I like my podcast that way. Some people do their podcast where there's zero background music or anything. That fits them. My personality is a little different. So it's going to definitely get your podcast ready to be presented to the world. So when you upload it, it'll take care of all the mixing and everything for you.
Okay, so take us through that process.
Mm-hmm.
So I have scheduled that I'm going to record and get everything done within this 4 hours. What does that look like? What does that look like from beginning, sitting down at 1 o'clock and getting up at 5?
Okay. Well, the 4 hours is if you're doing like numerous episodes. Me, I can do a podcast within less than an hour now. Mm-hmm. So if I'm sitting down to do my podcast, working on my platform, first thing I do is I go into my software that's on my computer, make sure I open that up, and I make sure my computer is working right, because worst thing you can do is try to start rolling. You get your soundboard, whatever going, your mixer going, and then your software is corrupt or something. So you always got to make sure, because there's updates that happen sometimes on the software, and that may delay you to start. So you got to check that. So I would say if your time's at 1 o'clock, 12:45, your computer, you're checking to make sure whether it's Audacity or whatever you're using on your computer, that it's ready to roll. So I do that. And then starting at 1 o'clock, I have my playbook out in front of me. I usually have like a piece of paper sitting in front of me, which highlights the 4 or 5 things I want to cover in the podcast. And I start, got my mic right here, put my headphones on, and I get going. I just start talking. I start talking out my whole subject matter as if I'm talking to an audience. This is if I'm doing it by myself, which I do it by myself sometimes. If you're going to do it with an interview, you need to make sure the person you're interviewing, that one, you give them prep questions prior to the interview. Last thing you want to do with somebody you're interviewing is hit them with questions they were not expecting, because trust me, they ain't coming back to your show. So you want to give them, I usually give them 5 days, notice of what they're going to be asked about, so they'll know. And that entails me doing a little research on who I'm bringing on the show. But you want to make sure they know how to access whatever hosting you're using for your podcast. So you got to make sure you test that with them. So they have to be in your green room 15 minutes before the show starts as well. You never want to just have people pop up and they're not ready. So this is something else. This is kind of like, in addition to doing an audio, if you're going to add video to your podcast, you want to do either Zoom or StreamYard, other ways, which allows it actually it makes the podcast even more conversational if you have an interview, because you're looking at each other. It's like you're in the same room. You can take care of technical issues before that. So that's how I start the podcast. And then after that, it's pretty much, you're basically, unless you have a sound engineer, you're making sure your sound is right, checking the levels on your mic, and you drop the flag at 1 o'clock and you start going. And if you schedule to go for an hour, you go that entire time. So then you have footage that you can edit out. You always want to have more than enough footage. So then you can cut out what you really want people to hear, and then, make sure that the show is quality.
Okay. And then, so you stop when you're done. And then what do you do afterward? What's the aftercare?
After I'm done, I go directly to the website. At the time, with my first year, I was using Anchor. So I would go to Anchor's website and I would upload my podcast. And after, it usually takes you, depending upon how much content is on there, it usually takes it may take 5 minutes or it may take 30 minutes. Once that's uploaded, then I start going through the selections of, am I adding background music? I hit play so I can actually listen to the podcast. So I listen to the whole podcast. I listen to the show because I want to make sure it's something that I like going out. So that's included with your time. So remember that if you do an hour show and you're going to be listening another hour yourself, just to make sure you like it and know what needs to be cut out. So after I do that and pick my background music, I make sure I have my promos, whatever I use for the opening of the show, and then my outros for the show. I make sure I have my advertisement segment inserted at the right part of the show. Typically, you want your advertisement to take place at the midpoint of the show. So you'll have the advertisement come in. You can actually announce, we'll be right back after this word from whoever your sponsor is, because that it's just like a TV show. You're letting people know, hey, I'm getting ready to hear advertisement. And you make more money from the advertisement when they come on in the middle of your show than at the beginning or the end. That's just from analytics, and that's what it's been recommended by podcast experts, is to make sure your advertisement is in the middle of your show.
And so how many advertisers would you suggest?
I would suggest, put like this. Ideally, you would love to have 3 advertisers. You can do now, the 3 advertisers, they're based upon financials. Who's paying the most for their time? The one who's paying the most is going to get the middle of the show break. The one who's paying the least will be at the beginning of the show, right after the intro. And then the one who's paying, midpoint, whatever, they will be at the end. Like when you're right before the outro comes on, you would have the last advertisement hit.
So the way mine is going to be set up is it's almost set up for segments, right? And so just in my mind, I'm thinking analytically, if that part, the fun part with the takeaways and here's what you need to apply, is really going to be the moneymaker. Like that's going to really draw a lot of people. So the intro, that's clear in the beginning. People haven't necessarily tuned in so much yet. That's the person who pays the less. Then you have the one in the middle, which is the interviews portion. Yes. And then you have the next one who goes into the takeaway. So after the interview, here's a word from our sponsors. We'll be right back. And then we come back with that. And then there would be room for outro too if we needed. So that could be up to 4.
Yes.
Okay.
If you can get 4, that's really great. 3, I've been shooting for 3, but if you get 4, you're like, that's gold. Your show is making money. You're getting the right, companies, supporting the show. And they bring listeners. That's another thing. The sponsors, they're going to help bring listeners too.
Right.
Because, they want to make money. They want people listening to your show.
Okay. And so, okay, cool. And so you are not chopping it up before you upload it to the platform?
Not to like, well, you would chop it up if you're using Anchor, but if you're using Buzzsprout, you don't have to. You can actually.
It's raw. It's everything that I just recorded. I'm just uploading it, and then I'm listening to it as though I'm a listener to ensure that it's capturing what I want it to. Yes. And if there's anything I hear that was maybe fluff or just not necessary, I can edit it right from their platform.
Yes, you can decide what content.
That's in Buzzsprout.
It's in Buzzsprout. It's in Anchor as well, but Buzzsprout is better at it. So if you're using Anchor, I would do my own editing and cutting up before uploading it, because their process is a little tedious. It's redundant. It's like, man, I really need to be able to do this quicker and constantly. It's just I don't like it.
Okay.
Yeah, I just don't.
Okay, so the listeners have they can decide what they want to do with that. But as far as the process, your process is, it's not necessary with the proper platform.
That's correct.
Got it.
I love you for doing this. You getting the wording correct. That's a speaker in me. I just give it out there, but like somebody can interpret it.
I got you. All right, so you've uploaded it and you've chopped up what you needed to chop up. You've inserted your intro where it needed to go, your outro where it needs to go.
Yes.
You've inserted, and these are all sound bites that you've pre-recorded, right?
Correct.
That are, it's the same link you're gonna click on every time.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, except unless you get a new sponsor or something, then you have to record it. Got it.
And
Okay.
sometimes sponsors will actually give you a recorded announcement.
Oh,
Like
okay.
they'll do it for you, and it's like, okay, it's like cool. But that's typically with the bigger sponsors, because they want to make sure whatever is said the way they want it. All that stuff. Like, cool, go ahead.
Right.
Cool. You can advertise. You paying for
it. Whatever you like.
Yeah, you pay for the time. Do it.
Okay, so it's all uploaded and ready to go. Now, if my show is Monday mornings, every Monday morning at 6 a.m., when should the pre-work already be in place?
Well, if you're trying not to work weekends, I would definitely say Thursday would be the day I would get my stuff done for it. So then it's free, like whatever's happening on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I don't have to worry about it, because you can actually do all your work on Thursday for the podcast, and you can schedule it to start airing Monday at 6 a.m. So you can just pre-schedule it. So you're done.
Okay. So pre-schedule it prior to it actually needing airing. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, every podcast I've done, I would always schedule, the date for it to release. It just makes it so much easier. Okay. And it's kind of cool when you wake up in the morning and you see your podcast is showing on your phone talking about it's available, next episode available. You're like, yeah, that's what I like to see.
Okay. Okay, so it's uploaded, it's pre-scheduled, you've done all of that stuff, and now it's released, right? Or what's the next step?
Marketing.
And that's before, that's once you have the first one recorded, it hasn't even aired yet.
Yeah, you can start marketing.
Okay.
You can do some marketing for it, like through social media. Not just social media, word of mouth. See if you can even get radio stations to even talk, like to broadcast that your podcast is getting ready to come out. Make sure they check it out. So you have the upper hand on a lot of people. You have a relationship with shows, some TV shows. Relationships with radio shows, where they can announce your podcast at this time. So that's gold. If you have shows like speaking for you, that's what you want. You want that because that's going to bring listeners to you.
Okay.
So yeah, you got to go ahead.
So I call it preheating, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I like preheating. I like it.
Right. And so wouldn't you preheat the moment you were clear about the name of it? Once you know the name of it and when you're actually going to be on, you could be preheating before you even have the first thing recorded.
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Okay.
You can, marketing preheating is an ongoing process. It never ends. Just like all these steps are repeatable, but definitely marketing is critical. People have to know about what you're doing.
People have to know.
And with you being a professional, your podcast definitely dealing with professional. LinkedIn. Gary Vee talks about LinkedIn and TikTok being the top 2 social media platforms he would be putting content on.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, And because they really are the real organic platforms right now. Everything else is kind of oversaturated. So, and you have a strong presence on LinkedIn. So I would be hitting LinkedIn with the podcast because people are going to listen. You got all the professional people on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
The professionals.
Yeah.
And
that's why I say mine is going to be in the morning, because I want mine to be like one a day vitamin, and you start your day off with it. And so my thing is, it has to be pre-scheduled because I hate getting up early in the morning, but that's really where my people are. Yeah. So you got to know where the placement for your stuff,
Like, I'm good friends with one of the comedians who on Cheryl Underwood's network. And she was telling me, because Cheryl Underwood has her own podcast network too. And they're in I think over 100 countries. She has to go to the talk studio over at CBS at 6 a.m. and they record the podcast before she does her show on the talk. Mm-hmm. And she was like, man, I wish we would just pre-record it. But yeah, because it's early. It's early in the morning, but I feel you on that. Scheduling it is gold. You ain't got to worry about that. That's the advantage, rather than if you're hosting a live radio show. You have to be there. If it's 6 a.m., you got to be there at no later than 5:15.
No, I believe in doing what I want, the way I want.
With who?
With who I want, and it's not with you at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, and I'm not a very strong morning person as far as a whole lot of talking. I got to get my stuff going a little bit after 9 a.m. I'm ready to talk to people.
Right. You got to know. So that's something for people to take into consideration. But the beauty of podcasting is it's when you want to do it and you just upload it for your audience when they should best receive it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, and you get to decide, right? I always say, if you start, marketing is accountability. Mm-hmm. And it also, like you said, people need to know what you're doing. Yes. And so by getting it out there while you're still putting up, you got to invite people to the party. Yes. Before you actually start putting the decorations and stuff up.
Right.
To make sure people are coming. If you post it 5 times and people start blocking you, you might not want to go forward with that.
You might not want to.
So, I know it's your step 6, but, you get to decide what that looks like. So you said marketing looks like putting it on your platforms, on different platforms, letting people know what it is that you're doing. Now, you want to get like a professional graphic made. You want, talk to us about that, because marketing is not only the message, it's also the look and feel of what you have going on. So talk to us about that.
Well, when you think about dealing with a graphic designer, professional look of your podcast, I like it too. I'm a Nike man. I love Nikes. I have Adidas too, but it's something about that swoosh that has always caught me. And so you want to have a logo that describes you in a very, very simple way, where they can look at that logo and that's the only brand that they see is your show when they look at that logo. But you want it to be clean. You want it to be eye-catching. But simple. You don't have to get complex with it. Every design that's successful is very simple. McDonald's, 2 golden arches to make you think of French fries. Mm-hmm. Every time you look at that, I just want to get some fries. Burger King, what is it, burger? It's just very simple. So that's what you want to think of logos. Don't be getting all super technical and super fancy, because people are going to be really confused with what you're trying to say what you're showing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. And So you get that graphic, a professional, eye-catching but simple design. You when you're posting it, is there's something what you're going to use, like in the trailer, is kind of the wording that you want to use to advertise it, right?
Correct.
So brand consistency, word consistency,
Yes.
those type of things. Okay. And so we've marketed
Yes.
it, and we've recorded and all that other stuff. What comes next, Rodney?
Well, also included in marketing is a slogan. Not just the name of the shows. Like, what is there a tagline is there something that people gonna think? Just like you always say, coming to America, which I love that analogy. When you think garbage, you think Akeem. But it's like, you really do. You want to have something that makes people think of that when they see your logo. Like I tell people, stop watching Inspiring Lives and it's time to become one. Something like that. Very simple and clean. That's going to make people think about your show all the time. Every successful company has one. Nike, just do it. State Farm, like a good neighbor. It's just simple. So they got the logo, they got the slogan. So that's included with the marketing, because you are basically, once again, starting a business.
Okay. So would you want that to be a part of the brain dumping process in the beginning, when you get clear about your message and who you're talking to and all of that stuff?
Okay. Yeah, that's like another sub step with the naming the podcast.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that's another sub step.
Okay, so you want to make sure though that it is included. Make sure to include tagline in marketing.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And now what?
After that, you're just ready to have fun. It's rinse and repeat. You got your schedule set up with your podcast. You are an official host of your podcast. So it's really just continuing to be consistent with it, especially with the first year, and get it out there. And from there, you can gauge what you want to do as far as you want to change directions of the show after that. Every shows can do that. So I want people to feel free to know, even though you've done all this work to come up with the name and brand, you can change it. One of the most successful shows on ESPN, which I love, First Take, Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman, originally started out, the name was Cold Pizza back in the day. Totally different take. And they rebranded, revamped, got new hosts, new style. You can change, you can evolve and grow with your show. The key is you still have to be clear every time you do that. So I think as your show grows, you still go back and take inventory on the direction you want to go with it, because you can always change the direction. You're not stuck.
Okay. All right. So there's nothing to it but just do it.
Just to do it. You greenlit. You've done the work, and now it's time to be so I said, be consistent, have a schedule, and do it. That schedule time. If you're taking vacation from your podcast, treat it like a real vacation, like just like you'll be vacationing from your job. If I'm not going to be doing my podcast, I'm not touching it. But when you come back to it, you have that schedule. So and make sure you stay healthy with it. Stay healthy. Don't make it another job that you hate. This is supposed to be something that you love doing. And that's what I tell people. Like, I know some other people who have a podcast, and I hear them talk about it, and I was like, man, I got to do this. I'm like, well, why are you still doing it? Because you sound like you don't like it no more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they've made it laborious.
Yeah. And, that whole part that you were talking about with your rebrand is that you really got to know who you are. And so you're really just showing up every day as yourself. So it's not work. and you've set it up as in a format that you enjoy, and doing it the way that you want to do it. So that's probably what they need to check on.
And you know, Natalie, when I do my lives or whatever, and I'm in my element. One, as you help me to be comfortable with admitting, I like attention. so when I get on there and I know people are watching, I'm like, oh, I can really just be me and give them me, and I'm just chill. It's crazy, but I'm more relaxed doing that than all the prep for the shows. It's crazy. It's like once the lights are on, I'm like, let's go. But I'm like that even with auditions. I have to work at being me, but once I book the job, it's fully me.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah. Well, I personally would like to invite you to be a guest on one of my podcasts.
like I'm gonna say no. I ain't trying to fight you. Yes, of course. Of course. I'm honored that you would even have me on your show with your platform. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But this has been a really amazing, I think it seemed so much more tedious. It seemed like work, and that's why I've avoided it. So this has really made me feel comfortable in actually launching it and getting it done, because I can just schedule it. It is a business. Yes. And so so talk to us about how a podcast really helps you in other areas of your life and what it is that you're doing, reach, brand, even just being an actor, credibility, things of that nature. Why should people really take going into podcasting seriously?
Well, I can say for me, starting off, doing a podcast was something I had procrastinated with because I wasn't for sure, because I didn't have the training for radio and all that stuff. So I didn't know how to do it. And I did all my research, but what it did, first thing is gave me a ton of confidence. It really did. It was like, man, your voice does matter out here. When I started seeing that people are listening and tuning in and seeing that lives are being changed. So that was one thing that really, it charged me up. It gave me confidence. Two, it did help tremendously with my acting career because it gave me exposure. Like people were like, well, who's this dude? So then next, what do people do? They Google you. So they were able to look up and see more stuff on me and what I have accomplished. And that actually got me in other rooms. I have more relationships with celebrities, I guess, that I had a year ago, a lot more. And so I'm becoming a name that's being respected. The way I treat the people I bring on my show has brought me a lot of credibility, because it was crazy. When I would send like a whole prep package to whoever's going to be on the show, they would be like, wow, I don't even get this from so-and-so, so-and-so. I was like, oh, okay. Well, you're getting it from me, because I think that anybody who comes on the show needs to they need to know exactly what's going to happen, because there are a lot of shows that bring guests on and they hit them with surprises. And before you know it, they upset because they didn't want to talk about certain things. But credibility, confidence in who I am, knowing that I can do something that I set my mind out to do it. I can make it happen. This whole time during quarantine, I remember when quarantine first started, I was just freaking out. I was like, oh man, what am I gonna do if production stops? Like, man, that's like my bread. So I was like, my voice. So I finally got enough courage to do it. And what it took was a pandemic to sit me down and make me do it. So don't let a pandemic happen in your life to make you have to do something that you're capable of doing. And it really it gave me a lot of courage. Just step out and do it. Just do it.
Good stuff.
Mm-hmm. I know I said a whole lot. I had to be quiet. I was like, I sound like some pastors would be like, I'm closing, y'all. I'm closing. I was like, would you close, man? I'm ready to go. Does not take that long. Get to it.
So what's the one thing you would say to someone who is considering starting a podcast? This your outro.
Okay. The one thing is that if you've been going back and forth thinking about it, that means that you're meant to do it. So don't let fear, don't let lack of knowledge or lack of resources be the reason why you don't step out and make your podcast happen. Because if you have a cell phone in your hand, you can do a podcast. That in today's world that we live in, the technology is available to make a podcast for as little as nothing, or if you want to spend $3,000, you can. So there's no excuse. Just do
Boom.
it.
Boom.
And you'll be proud of Alana because I'm helping her start a podcast.
Yes.
I told her we need to do one for couples. She's been telling me she want to do one too. So I was like, we'll do one. We'll have some fun with that too, because we've been married long enough now. I think we can add some quality to some people's lives.
Absolutely.
We've been through enough hell.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we look forward to that.
Yes.